Good afternoon. It is great to have all of you here today to celebrate with us an amazing life. And it's such a diverse and rich life that I wanted you to make sure to prepare yourself that we could be here for 2 or 3 hours remembering everything of Austin's. But we are trying to go on Austin's schedule. And if any of you knew him or was ever in a meeting with him, he said, if you can't get it done in 45 minutes, you don't know what you're doing. So we're going to try and stick as close to that as possible and try and squeeze an amazing life into 45 minutes and maybe a little more. Friends, we are gathered together this day to celebrate an amazing life, the life of Austin Hulcher. We come together from the diversity of our grieving to gather in the warmth of this community, giving stubborn witness to our belief that in times of sadness, there is room for laughter. In times of darkness, there will always be light. May we hold fast this day to the conviction that what we do with our lives matters and that a caring world is possible after all. While we gather together in sorrow, we also gather together in awe, acknowledging that in the mysteries of birth, life, and even in death, our lives embody glimpses of the sacred. The life that Austin lived, in all of its uniqueness, has now passed into our memories. So we gather today, lifting up the gifts and graces that Austin offered us, the straightforward, sometimes intense presence that he brought to each of his relationships, and see how within each of our own lives, Austin travels with us into the future. So may the Spirit be with us all today, granting us the grace to find comfort in the midst of grief, hope in moments of sorrow, and in death, a reminder of the wonder of life.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed days and the dark sacred nights. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yeah, I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry. I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
I'm not sure if you're like me, but I can hear Austin's voice right now saying, who forgot to light the candles? Hey, Derek, do you think you can handle that during this prayer?
Well, you know what? So they won't light.
Never mind.
Bud Fisher and my dad, who filled the
They did it
candles
yeah.
with the oil, there's no oil in them. Oh my gosh! I mean,
Okay, that's it. We're coming back next week after there's candles in them. Yeah. All right. Well, Derek, you're off the hook. All right. You'll all have to come back when there's oil in the candles.
what?
So let's pray. Spirit of life, who brought us birth, you are ever more ready to hear than we are to pray. You know our needs before we ask and our ignorance in asking. Give to us now your grace, that as we shrink before the mystery of death, we may see the light of eternity. Speak to us once more the solemn message of life and death, and remind us that every human life with a mind to think and a heart to love is an expression of the creating spirit of life. Help us to live without fear, so that when our days here are accomplished, it can be said that we lived life to its fullest, even to our last days, so that living or dying, we may be enveloped by grace, and that nothing in life or in death will be able to separate us from the love embodied in the life and teachings of Jesus. Amen.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
I'd like to read a poem, the author is unknown, called A Life Well Lived. A life well lived is a precious gift of hope and strength and grace from someone who has made our world a brighter, better place. It's filled with moments, sweet and sad, with smiles and sometimes tears, with friendships formed and good times shared, and laughter through the years. A life well lived is a legacy of joy and pride and pleasure, a living, lasting memory our grateful hearts will treasure. As we affirm and celebrate Austin's life today, may the Spirit renew our strength, touch our imaginations, and guide us in finding deeper meaning in all of life's circumstances.
Hello, we are Dee Dee, Sonia, and Yvonne, daughters of Austin and Mary Ellen Hulcher. On behalf of Mom and all of our family, we would first like to thank you all for coming and sharing in this special celebration of Dad's life with us. We have appreciated your support, your prayers, and your friendship.
How do you really summarize Dad's life when he lived all the way into his 9th decade? We look back into each of those decades and realize how much living goes on in a 10-year period of time. By word, it seems short, but in living, it's rich. We know because we were living with him in the majority of those decades. Here is just a glimpse into Austin Hulcher's life to honor him.
We start with decade number 1, Austin Wayne Hulcher, born on December 29, 1931, to the parents of Adolph and Blanche Hulcher. Dad grew up on their Verdun, Illinois farm to an English school teacher and a homemaker mom and a German farmer father. The farm and the gardens were sustainable to weather the Great Depression. Dad was doing chores and driving a tractor by age 8. He raised chickens to purchase his first car. And he grew up as a good Christian values and hard work. Dad could recite all the presidents of the United States in order. He prided himself on knowing all the states and their capitals. And in later years, he would drill us all on it, and the grandkids too. Dad collected stamps and silver dollars. Even though he was an only child, he thought it was great to grow up with double cousins, brothers married sisters.
During decade number 2, Dad learned to work the farm right alongside his dad. Cattle, hogs, chickens, corn, and beans. If it had wheels and tires, Pop learned to drive it. Trucks, tractors, and trailers became the routine for hauling and other local work. And their farm and trucking business soon became known as A.E. Hulcher and Son. In high school, Dad sang tenor in the Glee Club. He was a part of the Drama Club and the Future Farmers of America. But mostly, he hurried back home to help with chores. After graduation, Pop, with his best buds, took a couple of road trips out west to California, Seattle, and Vancouver, British Columbia. Dad loved to drive, anything. He was seeing the sights and putting in the miles, even delivering automobiles, trucks, and supplies for his dad to a Canadian oil company up in Edmonton, Canada. Lots of miles for a young man. In his youth, he enjoyed responsibilities on the farm with the trucking business. One summer, though, his mom encouraged him to take some time and go to church camp at Epworth Springs in Lewiston. This is where he became enamored with our mom, Mary Ellen Lomolino. She was attracted to Dad because he was one of the few people who had a car.
37 Chevy.
Dating mostly consisted on taking Mom on the truck runs, but they did go to an occasional movie and hung out together at many of the MYF youth meetings. They were married February 11, 1951, at the Verdun United Methodist Church.
That brings us to decade 3. This was a dynamic decade in the fact that we 3 were born. Deanna Dale came first in 1952, Sonia Rose in 1955, and Yvonne Ruth in 1961. This was the decade of dedication to a growing family, working farms, bulldozing and digging lakes, miles of truck trips, and setting up and supplying gas to a couple of truck stops. Mom and Dad managed to take some winter vacations with some friends, which inspired the theme and decor for the Verdun Truck Stop's Fiesta Restaurant and Siesta Motel, which they had partnered in and built together. Pop helped with the digging of Sunset Lake in Girard, where we were the first to pick out our lake lot. These were the best days ever, swimming and water skiing, picnics at the lake. Dad and Mom were young and became a part of the Sunday afternoon ski show. Dad was the star slalom skier. And later we found out he was one of the clowns, and so it was quite the show. This was also the era of the annual trek down to the Lake of the Ozarks with the old Pinnacle group for a week of boating and water fun. We were water skiing by the age of 6, and Pop would pull anybody out of the water on skis that came along. Many of you out there, I'm sure, were taught by Austin Hulcher. These were the thrilling times of speed and endurance as we gloated upon being able to ski 26 miles to Bagnell Dam there at the Lake of the Ozarks. Dad certainly did his slalom show, hot dogging across the waves at high speed. There was still work to be done after all that play. Dad would sometimes take us girls on long truck trips with him to keep him awake. Trips of trucking cattle from the Kansas City stockyards to the hogs to a packing plant, trips to the grain elevator, hauling corn and beans to be barged down the river near St. Louis. He often would do these trips at night when the traffic was, there was little traffic or wait lines. Shirley singing to Pop would, keep him awake and would do the trick, but, only to fall asleep many times by that warm, lulling engine.
Dad is in his 30s in the 4th decade. This was when Mom and Dad decided they were modern and no more living in an old farmhouse anymore. It was time to move to a new split-level deluxe home, clearing the way to the cornfield next door to us. Of course, we loved growing up on the farm and across the old hard road from our favorite playmates, the Reischauers. Verdon was a vibrant community with the historic Route 66 going through our farm. Our family was involved with the United Methodist Church, and Dad was a Mason and a Shriner. He took part in the Illinois Farm Bureau, the Verdon Jaycees, the Kiwanis, and the Lions Club. And in 1966, he spent hours and miles in the air, got his pilot's license, and bought a Cessna 172 prop airplane with Bud King. They could fly to their joint Missouri farms and get levees built and the crop work done faster, more frequently, and more effectively. This was also the time where Dad was able to use some of his trucking equipment to help establish and operate the beginnings of Hulcher Emergency Company, cleaning up train derailments. This came out of a need, and with Dad's expertise, he was able to help and set up with his Hulcher cousins this major operation countrywide. Many devoted people made this company successful. This was also where he traded in a Cessna and went to a sportier plane and got a Blanca, and that was so fun to ride in when I was young. He was always bulldozing and moving dirt. He had the equipment and people all around him that knew to contact him. The Edgewood Country Club was his next big job, making way for a golf course and a swimming pool. Dad had a good way with people and many good working partnerships.
The 1960s to 1970 were great years growing up. We felt like we were the luckiest kids in the world. These were the times we would try to beat Dad in a game of ping pong after dinner. He had a wicked serve that was hard to return, but sometimes he let off, but it pushed us to be better. In 1969, Dad got a call from Heifer Project International, a nonprofit organization furnishing high-quality livestock to developing countries. They needed someone to truck 47 head of cattle to Miami. As it turned out, Dad and his farm friend Bud ended up then flying the cattle from Miami to Bolivia in South America to keep the cattle calm and comfortable. There's a lot more to this story, and Dad and I, with my stepdaughter Amy's illustrations, wrote a little book called The Flying Cowboy, and it was quite an adventure. I married Bert Lancaster, our Methodist minister, and Dad walked me down the aisle, and then stepped beside Bert to be his best man. Our parents inherited Amy as their granddaughter that day as well. and Dad would say that Bert was one of his best friends.
Austin is in his 40s in decade 5. This is when our parents became grandparents. Derek was born to Dee Dee and Bert in 1975. Dad gained another son-in-law, Randy, when he walked me down the aisle in 1977. Grandson Justin arrived in 81, somewhat of a namesake, as Pop always wore the Justin brand cowboy boots. Yvonne was in her teens during this time and riding and showing horses on a circuit around the Midwest. And Mom and Pop would travel to some of her shows now and then, but this was also a time that they dreamed of warmer and longer days, especially during the winter months. They loved the Southwest, where they eventually built their desert home in Fountain Hills here. This became the destination resort for all of our families and close friends through the years, many of you sitting here. There were pool parties and putt-putt and a good game of shuffleboard now and then. There were boat trips to Saguaro Lake, road trips up to Sedona, over to Sedona, and up on the Apache Trail. Pop was always betting a margarita with any of us on just about anything, and perhaps he owes you one still. His namesake here. Dad would never turn down a piece of peach cobbler, popped green olives in his mouth like popcorn, and always loved a bologna sandwich on white bread with Miracle Whip. He never drank the last 2 drops of milk in his glass, and he loved a good rare steak and was known to say, "I like it to moo when I poke it."
The 1980s was Dad's 6th decade. He was in his 50s now. He and Mom are enjoying life full-time in the desert, with Dad flying back to Illinois and Missouri to plant the crop in the spring and back to harvest in the fall. Eventually, the Illinois farm was sold to loyal caretakers, Kendall and Charlotte Cole, who are here today, and they came from Illinois, after so many years. This was the decade of cruising the world and exploring places of rich history and experiencing beautiful geography, like Mexico, Panama, South America, Hawaii, Australia, Europe, Egypt, Africa, Caribbean, and I can't even name them all. So you might have seen the map and all the little dots on it. That was everywhere but the United States, that would be solid blue. In between all of that fun, Dad felt he needed to be somewhat productive, so he became the pickup delivery man for my interior design business. Hauling miles again, only this time it was tile and carpet. When I wasn't working, I loved taking trips with Mom and Dad, and I think I went on 3 different, I don't think, I know. I went on 3 different couples' honeymoons with them. I could talk a long time about that, but the story could go on.
Both Pop and Mom worked hard to get the Fountains United Methodist Church started and up and running. Dad sat on many a church meeting, and as David alluded, yes, the 45-minute, if it wasn't done, he was up and out of there. So again, we are really trying to keep the service at 45 minutes. That being said, Dad loved this church, and that includes so many of you sitting here today. In 1989, Dad walked daughter number 3, Yvonne, down the aisle. Bruce Wyman became a member of our family, as well as Griffin, his son. Grandchildren are popping up right and left. Justin, JR, edged in just between the decades. Then Carrie, CB, Rory, and Audrey, Zulu, soon followed. Gramps had a fun nickname for each of his grands. Duke, their Australian shepherd, also brought Pop a lot of joy. Duke was amazingly smart, and everyone had a Duke story to tell. Dad talked like Duke was a nuisance. And many of you know his theory on dogs. You know, 1 dog is a dog, 2 dogs is a half a dog, and 3 dogs is no dog.
No dog at all. Yeah.
It's pretty true, too.
Dad talked like Duke was a nuisance, but he was truly a faithful companion. Dad cried the day Duke died. This was also the decade where Lake Powell in Arizona and Utah became our ultimate family vacations together. Our closeness and the beauty of this grandiose lake created special memories with the grandkids. They thought Gramps was larger than life, and they would say Lake Powell is better than Disney World any day. Mom would say that Pop could drive almost anything, but a houseboat during a monsoon storm was not one of them.
In Dad's 7th decade, he gained a couple more grandsons, Colton, Gunnar, and Hunter, Butch. This makes 8 grandchildren. Health-wise, Dad was 67 when he experienced a heart attack and underwent quadruple bypass surgery. It was a setback for him, but that surgery gave Pop almost 21 more years of life. We also lost Bert that year, which was hard for all of us. In 2001, we surprised Mom and Dad with a 50th anniversary celebration luau. This luau style in Yvonne's home here in Fountain Hills, where many of our friends and family were there from 9 different states. Dad got to wear one of his many Hawaiian shirts. We feasted as he and Mom danced the night away to the steel drums. Dee Dee and Craig were married the very next day, sharing their anniversary date with them, February 11th. Pop is now volunteering and driving for the American Red Cross. He is taking people to doctor appointments and therapies. He is such a great driver, he is encouraged to enter the Arizona Van Driver Rodeo. He wins first place. Continuing on to Florida for the Nationals, placing 9th. We are not surprised. During this time, Gramps is bribing his grandchildren, his grandkids, offering them $1 for every tooth he can pull. He was also known to offer them money for their pigtails, too. Sometimes they took him up on his deal. Dad is now mastering some unique and challenging jigsaw puzzles at this point, and he's putting together model cars, trucks, planes, and trains. He emails, plays solitaire on the computer, enjoys looking at the family pictures, even though he told Mom she takes way too many.
In decade 8, Mom and Dad are jeeping it all over Colorado, Utah, and Arizona with their Jeeper Creepers group. They are road tripping and putting in some miles once again into some beautiful remote backcountry with good friends. Seattle grandchildren are getting married. Road trips from Arizona to Seattle are more frequent, and quite an adventure trekking up through the western states to the Pacific Northwest. Great-granddaughter Eliana, Gigi, that stands for granddaughter, or grandgirl.
Great-granddaughter.
Okay. Is born, and we are taking tons of pictures of 4 generations. We would tell Dad, look at what you and Mom started. Mom and Dad are always winning the generations dance at all the weddings, cruises, and everywhere we would go. They have been married 60 plus years at this point. Their advice to newlyweds for staying married that long, one can only imagine, and it would be not G-rated.
So this brings us to the final decade of Dad's life. He lived almost 8 years into his 9th decade. His health was even more vulnerable. He'd gotten a new lease on life several times. We mentioned to him that his body was like a truck, needing new tubes, wires, and spark plugs. He had a rebuilt engine that would give him more miles, too. He had replacement parts, and with Mom's watchful eye and good cooking, she made sure the gas and the fluids mixed well to maintain a more efficient engine and machine. This is how Dad could understand what he was going through. 5 more great-grandkiddos arrived. Little Austin, his namesake, Crew, Bryn, Cora, and Sawyer.
This was the decade we kept a carrot out in front of Pop, planning our next trip together. In August, we cruised the Columbia and Snake Rivers between Washington and Oregon, the other part of the Lewis and Clark Trail that Pop wanted to complete. He made it, but he was tired, and it was time to go home. This was the time and the decade that makes us all reflect on what's most important about living. We look back through the decades and see the common denominator that traveled miles with Dad through time. We see a man who was loyal and treated people well. Pop loved his family and his church. He embraced the miles he traveled and the experience he had along the way and the people he met. He was generous, ambitious, hardworking, and an entrepreneur even when he didn't know it.
He was patriotic and showed concern for America. He loved a good game of golf, ping pong, shuffleboard, Chinese checkers, and Mexican train. To us, Dad was like, he had the looks and the coolness of Clint Eastwood. When he grinned, it spoke miles, so many miles. My ringtone on my phone for him when he called me was the whistle to the good, bad, and the ugly. You can feel good about your 3 million miles. Dad was never big on giving gifts, but he was certainly very big and loved to give experiences.
He sure did do a lot of living in his 9th decade of life. We reminded him that he and Mom raised good kids with downright good virtues and values, and that has trickled all the way down to his great-grandchildren.
Dad's best friend was Mom.
Come on over here. Dad's best friend was Mom, yeah. They spent over 7 decades together. So much of Pop's journey has been her journey, too. Her love and encouragement and the raising of us 3 girls while he was hauling the miles meant a great deal to him. He describes her as a loving, caring, and understanding wife. There is no doubt that her strength and dedication for almost 69 years has been undeniably astounding.
So that's about it. A glimpse into Austin Hulcher's life. Can't imagine him doing anything less than taking the greatest road trip ever to heaven with his 70-year AAA membership card in his pocket.
Sipping on a margarita.
Sipping on a margarita with a Duke by his side, and then now and again hot dogging across the waves.
It's been a good journey, Pop. We love you. Yeah.
You're not supposed to say stuff like that and then have us sing.
I'm going to try to get through it. Remember when I was young and so were you, and time stood still, and love was all we knew. You were the first, so was I. We made love and then you cried. Remember when? Remember when we vowed the vows and walked the walk, gave our hearts, made the start. It was hard. We lived and learned. We made life and joy and then hurt. Remember when? Remember when old ones died and new were born, and life was changed, disassembled, rearranged. We came together, fell apart, and broke each other's hearts. Remember when? Remember when the sound of little feet was the music, and we danced to week, brought back the love, we found trust, vowed we never give it up. Remember when? Remember when 30 seems so old now, looking back, it's just a stepping stone to where we are, where we've been. Said we'd do it all again. Remember when? Remember when we said we'd turn all gray when the children grow up and move away? We won't be sad, we'll be glad for all the life we've had. Remember when? Remember when? Remember when?
Before the sublime mystery of life and spirit, the mystery of infinite space and endless time, we stand in reverent awe. This much we know: we are at least one phase of the immortality of life. The mighty stream of life flows on, and in this mighty stream, we too flow on, not lost, but each eternally significant. For this I feel: the Spirit never betrays the person who trusts it. Physical life may be defeated, but life goes on. Character survives, goodness lives, and love is immortal. So today, may the love with which we hold one another keep us strong in our commitment to carrying on Austin's memory and more, a sense of carrying on in our lives the kind of dependable and straightforward way of being that he showed in his life. I invite you to stand as you're able and join in singing together the Journey of Life. You'll recognize the melody.
Journey of the life we live, for each it is unique. It does not always leave us with the path that we would see.
peace of God, which passes all understanding, keep our hearts and minds in the knowledge and love of God and of God's Son, Jesus Christ our Lord. And the blessing of God, Creator, Redeemer, Sustainer, be among us and remain with us always. Amen. And go in peace. 45 minutes